Good morning and welcome to Emotional Intelligence, what it is, why it's important, and how to develop it. My name is Shirley Triller and I'm the facilitator of today's webinar. I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you over the next hour. My goal is to make this webinar as interactive as possible and most importantly, for you to learn some ways to increase your emotional intelligence. To do this, I need your help in sharing your thoughts regarding several questions that we will do via chat and also a poll. My colleague, Joe Bender, who is our sales and marketing leader, will be our technology navigator. I'm also very pleased to say that I will be interviewing a coaching client who will share her experience with the emotional intelligence assessment and the tactics that she's put in place to further develop her emotional intelligence. As an executive coach, my passion is helping people grow and inspiring them to take action. In most cases, this means being a thought partner in helping clients shift their mindset, identify their barriers, and instill new habits so they can achieve their goals. My career in talent management began about 20 years ago when I intentionally transitioned from sales roles to become a career transition outplacement consultant. With training and experience, I became an executive coach and leadership development facilitator. Over the years, I've listened and strategized with innumerable clients as they have shared their career stories and their challenges. After a number of years, it was apparent that weaknesses in emotional intelligence were most often the key contributor to the challenges people faced in their careers. From my perspective, if I had known what I know now about emotional intelligence, my life and the lives of those around me would have been much better. I'm sure that comment gave a few of my colleagues who are listening a good chuckle. In our session today, we will cover what is emotional intelligence. It's one of those things that we don't notice until something isn't going well in our relationship with others. We'll talk about why it's important. The research on this topic is absolutely endless. And then in terms of how to develop it, we'll cover 6 ways to increase your emotional intelligence with the help of our guest client. To help us understand emotional intelligence, I'd like you to think about a good leader, someone you respect and admire. This person could be a colleague or a current supervisor. It could be a family member or a friend. In your chat box, I'd like you to share 3 words that describe the characteristics of this admired leader. I'll give you just a moment and we'll see what words we have coming in.
Get any?
Okay, so we see open, engaged, honest, motivating, empathetic, role model, good example, professional example. I think I mentioned good listener. Okay, great. The words that we see when I do this in a training, and those words that you came up with are all frankly related to relationships. We look at things like respectful, trustworthy. Trustworthy is a one that always comes up multiple times. Caring, honest, and the list goes on. Occasionally I will hear people mention intelligent or subject matter expert. These are things that are related to IQ. Unlike IQ, which is pretty much set at birth, the good news is EQ can be increased with focus and with lots of practice. Now, hopefully, none of you have ever met this man, but I'm sure you've had some disconcerting experiences with some of your leaders. Think about a bad leader. What 3 words describe this person? If you would, please enter those in your chat box. We'll give everyone just a little time for the answers to come in. Here we are. Disrespectful, negative. Disrespectful is a big one. Impatient, short-sighted, demanding, won't get to the point. Oops, former boss. Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, research shows that 50% of us have left a job due to a manager. In many cases, I would wager to say this is about a lack of emotional intelligence skills. So let's talk about what is emotional intelligence. It is a set of emotional and social skills that lead to our ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions. And at the same time, recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. This is a definition that was first developed by these 2 gentlemen who were at the forefront of the research on emotional intelligence. It's one of the easiest because it is so clear that you have ownership in managing your own emotions as well as then how you influence others. If we look at the examples of bad leaders, it's quite clear that they had limited awareness and understanding of the impact they were having on others, which is completely the opposite for the admired leaders who understood their impact and consistently modified their behavior to support their team. When we think about why it's important, as I mentioned, there's extensive data on this. The Center for Creative Leadership, which is highly regarded, found the primary causes of derailment of executives involve deficits in emotional competencies. Those 3 were handling change, not being able to work well with a team, and poor interpersonal relationships. In our executive outplacement practice, these 3 factors are routinely key contributors to the terminations of our clients. Another powerful piece is from Daniel Goldman. Daniel Goldman was what I would call the guru that made emotional intelligence a well-known expertise. And he cites that he shared that emotional intelligence is an even bigger contributor to success for leaders than for individual contributors. 90% of their performance was attributable to emotional intelligence skills rather than IQ. That's a powerful statement. Their work focuses on leading others rather than the technical competencies that we might expect. When I started to develop our emotional training workshops, I had a great deal of research that I wanted to share, but I also wanted to make it memorable with our participants. During our trainings, the participants have a lot of fun learning about the research by playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? We get lots of laughs, but they also have the time to discuss this and really grasp the significance of it. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to play along with the poll. Now, I can't give you the $1 million over the phone, but nevertheless, let's play along. So in a groundbreaking study, the Millionaire Mind, what % of millionaires ranked getting along with others as one of the most important factors in getting rich? Your options are 98%, 94%, 74%, and 70%. We'll give you some time to have the votes come in. Okay, let's go ahead and end the polling. All right. Well, this is a very educated group because 94% is indeed the answer. Good job. Good job.
Marty.
Yeah. Okay. Prior to the trainings, the participants take the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 Leadership Assessment, or in some cases, our coaching clients take the 360 version. I'm only going to give a very high-level overview of the assessment. You can see that there are 5 sections, which are called the domains. Starting at the top and going clockwise, you'll see self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. Within each of these domains are 3 subscales. For instance, if you look at the green section for decision-making, you'll see problem-solving, reality testing, and impulse control. While all the domains are important, this is quite commonly one that people have a great opportunity to grow their skills. I'm going to only show one page of the report, which is quite comprehensive. This is the top section of the executive summary page where clients can see their highest subscales. You'll see up at the top of this report, there's a total EI score, and this individual is at the low end of the mid-range. There's a gold bar at the top. This is the bar that indicates where successful leaders, their scores range in this zone. So in a perfect world, this person wants to strive to increase his skills so that his scores, which we'd probably have him retake this in 6 months, would be up in the leadership, what I would call zone. You can then see the 3 highest subscales for impulse control, for independence, and stress tolerant, all very close to the leadership zone. If we go to the lower portion of that page, here are the lowest 3 subscales: social responsibility, interpersonal relationships, and assertiveness. And there is quite a gap there. One of the things that we provide is a spiral graph. This provides a visual representation that is a lot easier for many clients to grasp. And like any wheel, in a perfect world, you'd like this wheel to be round. And you can see where those scores are lower. And then you can, of course, see where they are greater. And then all of these interact together. That's often the mystery in figuring this out. But as we probe during the coaching sessions, the answers start to evolve, and the clients can see how it all plays together and where to focus most of their attention. To help this all come alive, I'm delighted to introduce you to Jill, whose last name will remain confidential. She's an accomplished executive leader and has a wealth of business experience over the last 25 years on senior and executive leadership teams in both the profit and the nonprofit world. Jill, thank you for your willingness to share your story about emotional intelligence. What did you find most helpful about the EQI 2.0 leadership assessment?
Thank you, and this process has been really amazing for me. I think the things that resonate are, obviously, by the time you get to a certain point in your business, and thank you for pointing out that I've been doing this for more than 25 years, I think at this point, we all know, ourselves pretty well from the standpoint of, I know this is a strength and I know this is a weakness, but I think what is missing and that the assessment clearly points out and provides clarity for is how does that weakness really affect you? What triggers that weakness, and where does that weakness come from? And I think that going through the assessment and the extensive amount of information that you provide to dig into this shows that there are trigger points to some of these challenges, and that they can all be managed, and that you can learn. Yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks. If I was an old dog, yeah. So, and obviously it's strengths. Anyone who knows me wouldn't be surprised to know that, my assertiveness is off the chart, but my weakness is impulse control, and anyone who knows me knows that as well. So you take that strength of assertiveness, you throw in some lacking impulse control, and you come across as an aggressive B word. And so no one wants to be considered rigid, pushy, controlling. And so, through this process, it gave me a way to recognize what triggers that, do a little soul searching, kind of get a little therapy session going inside my own head, and come up with some solutions to help me manage that.
Jill, do you think willpower is enough?
I've been on and off of a diet so many times, I can tell you that willpower and working out, I don't think anybody can say, yes, just add a little more willpower and, you're all going to stick to that workout regime. So I think, it's just like with raising children, or, it has to be a habit. You have to create a habit, and you have to have a skill set and things to pull from when you're put in that situation, because your fight or flight mechanism will kick in. And for me, it's always fight, which comes across with a lack of impulse control.
What happens when you're tired, when you're dealing with multiple challenges? We all have personal lives, we have our professional lives, and we just have our lives when we're out in the community.
Sure.
And you're tired.
You are tired. And I think that, we're all doing more professionally. Organizations have downsized, so we're all taking on more responsibility. It's true, we're not sleeping well, we're in front of our screens too much. And so, add that to me being hungry and the whole angry thing. And you're just very quick. You're very, your answers seem very curt and sharp. I notice this with family relationships, work relationships, every one of those interactions. And, I think that's where road rage is coming from. So, one trip around 465 and my impulse control is out the window.
Yeah, exactly. So we really have to be in a very centered state, and we have to have a plan ahead of us.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. In what ways would you like to see your emotional intelligence grow?
It's definitely around this impulse control. I can look back many years and many situations, both professionally and personally, and see where, that area of impulse and lack of impulse control has caused me to make some very improper decisions, or, have pushed me in a way that I wish in hindsight that I hadn't gone there. And it's almost like having an out-of-body experience, because you kind of see it happening and you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this, or I can't believe this is happening again, but you can't stop it. It's almost like it's on the train's on the track and it's barreling down.
Yeah, your emotions have taken over and your logic is not prevailing. Great, thank you. The key to any habit change is to clearly identify the target and create some specific tactics that will increase the skills necessary and ultimately lead to these new behaviors. Willpower is simply not enough. It's like any other muscle. At some point, it's tired, and then all of our emotions take over. Jill, would you share some of your approaches that have been helpful?
Yeah, so we, I had an opportunity to obviously take this assessment, go through it in detail with Shirley, and then look at ways that I thought would work for me to help manage this impulse control, and understanding that impulse control for some people is their strength. So the word impulse isn't a bad thing, it's kind of what keeps us alive. And kind of going with your gut. But I think that's where I've always misunderstood impulse control, is that when I would react to the impulse, I would think that I was speaking my mind and being confident and, holding my ground, but that's not the way it was coming across. And so a couple of the things that, you and I have worked on is this kind of default feature of, what is what is your life going to be like if you don't fix this, or what will continue to happen to you? And, you know, the easy one is just to say, okay, you're going to lose relationships, you're going to struggle in careers. But to really illustrate this and to create the visual for myself, and I guess this is because I'm, you know, have a vivid imagination, my default is to see myself as a bag lady. That, you know, you've got to create strong relationships. You have to have caring relationships. You have to get along with people. And if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself alone, unemployed, on the streets. You know, I mean, obviously it's an extreme, but for me, sometimes I need to see the extreme to snap out of whatever situation I'm in.
You know, quite common when people are looking at this, they're not vivid in their description. And so your description of a bag lady, granted that is the ultimate, but that's a powerful statement. And that increases the motivation.
Absolutely.
Because there's two things that are working here. It's your personal motivation as well as skills. And so that's a foundational understanding. Okay.
Yeah. The other one that I have had success with, and sometimes it comes across a little cheesy, is that you have your own personal mantra, your own personal mission statement. And, you know, I believe in the power of positive thinking, but I think that we encourage others to do that, and we do less of it ourselves when it's about ourselves. And so, you know, I'm always encouraging, you know, my daughter to be, you know, think more positive about yourself. And then I realized that I don't do it for myself. So this mantra is just kind of that, and I'm not necessarily going to share it with all of you, but just, you know, those few, you know, that very brief statement you say to yourself, and I get this Saturday Night Live skit in my head, you know, standing in front of the mirror, I'm good, but, you know, more along the lines that I have complete ability to control my destiny, and I have the ability to control my impulses, and I can set the stage and set the course for how I want to see my life play out.
So it could be, if I was going to ad-lib here, a personal motivation statement could be, I will not be a bag lady. I will master my emotional intelligence skills. Or I will not be a bag lady. I will manage my impulse.
Yes, so get out of my head. Yeah. So you just get right out of my head now. And, you know, the other one I think that we had talked about is the whole negative self-talk. And that is a big one for me, is that when I am in a situation and I feel challenged or, you know, I get pressed, I immediately go to the person that I'm getting frustrated with, their comments and things, I go immediately to the negative and take it very personally, and that kicks in the fight or flight mode, rather than stepping back and trying to take in those nanoseconds to see what their perception is, where they're coming from, before I react. And, you know, that is very difficult to do in a large meeting when there's a lot going on and activities. I don't necessarily sit there and, you know, say, okay, I see that Mike is feeling this way. But it absolutely, in going through this process, has made me more aware of when those opportunities have presented themselves. Do I always get it right? No. Is this a learning process? Absolutely. But after the fact, then I can look at a situation and kind of rewrite or reimagine that conversation in a way that could have been healthier, or completely understand where Mike was coming from.
This is a skill. What Jill's describing is a skill. And initially when clients start, I have them write out stories and bring them back in, and we talk about them. From these stories, they can identify their triggers. It could be language that someone uses. It could be certain situations related to maybe just somebody's talking at length and you want to get to the point quicker. So it's isolating what are those crucial moments, if you will, and then the more you do that, you're developing a skill, and so you do it much quicker. You can do it in a meeting. Your reaction will be to go to the negative, whether it's about the person, it could be about the situation, the topic, but then as you start to practice it, that time that you spend in a negative place becomes smaller and smaller, which allows you energy then to move in a very positive direction.
Okay. Yeah, so that kind of goes into, going along with that idea of being in a meeting and Mike says something and I immediately want to, jump on it, is having something very real and in the moment that just pulls me back. And that, oftentimes, I'm saying, okay, just breathe. Other times, I write a little smiley face up in the corner of my paper or on my notebook with, just to remind me that every one of these situations has a very short shelf life. But if I react to it in the wrong way, the shelf life of that situation gets much longer. Mm-hmm. And so I can smile, I can breathe, or not smile and still breathe and move forward in that moment. And obviously, being in a meeting, being in that situation is probably the most challenging for me. But having just that little symbol, or, it would be better if somebody was sitting there with a 2x4, but that doesn't always happen to keep me from saying something I shouldn't. But having the little smiley face certainly helps.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's going on physiologically when there is a crucial moment, the primitive part of your brain is taking over. That's not the best part of your brain. I mean, it's great if you have a saber-toothed tiger coming at you, but it's really not ideal when you're in a business setting. You don't need to protect yourself in the same manner. One of the things that you can do to help pull out of this is to ask yourself what and how questions. So, what can I do to be helpful? How can I move this meeting forward? And it's those type of questions are engaging the logical part of your brain that shuts down then the primitive part.
Yeah, and one of the other areas, and I think this one kind of 5 and 6 can kind of go together, but for me, the whole idea of having supporters and accomplices, and I think we're all guilty of this, that a situation happens and we're retelling it to, whether that's a spouse, a family member, your best friend, a coworker, they all jump on your bandwagon and they're like, he had no right, and you blah, 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 and they're all ready to have you go and, with pitchforks and, torches and, storm the building. Okay, those people are not in your corner because, they're not the ones that have as much to lose. And I, as much as I love my family tends to just jump on my bandwagon when oftentimes they need to tell me to slow down and look at it a different way. You don't always want to hear that, but it is absolutely the most important thing that can happen at the time. And so I think dividing that group or identifying who those supporters are and who those accomplices are, it's just like dieting. You go out to dinner with your friends, you order a salad, and they, convince you to go ahead and order the pizza and the dessert. Yeah. And now you're so far down the pack, you're getting dessert and you're getting one to take home. And then tomorrow you wake up and you feel horrible for your decisions. And similarly to these kinds of situations where, you need someone that stands up to you, especially me and my assertiveness, and says, pull back, rethink this.
Right. And hopefully those are the kind of people that do ask you questions that demonstrate their empathy to you. You do need to be around people that are genuinely listening to you and that really care, and at the same time support you. Many of these accomplices don't really realize what they're doing and that you do indeed need support. So at that time, with those people, it's important to tell them, here's what I'm working on. I need your support, and this is how you can do it.
Great, yeah. This last one is probably the one that I'm not really sure that I'm addressing the way I should. And it's not to say that I'm not an empathetic person. I obviously am. But I think that it's that way of looking more outward instead of inward and helping me to better see things from other people's perspective rather than jumping to conclusions. And I think as I do this with people that are important to me and that I truly do care about, than people who are just come into my life in a meeting or colleagues or things of that nature, this will become this will become a habit. I will have exercised that muscle. It will be immediate for me. It won't require me to, excuse me, give it, special thought. It'll just become part of who I am.
We all have people that in different settings we find challenging. And to start to build those relationships, if we begin with, where is this person coming from? What are their needs? What are their interests? And particularly, what are their challenges? What are their fears even? And when we look at those and take the time to write them out, we're really humanizing that person. And we want to help people in general. So there's a connection there. And then knowing that information arms us with, how do I best influence this person in terms of their emotions so that the two of us can relate? Okay?
Absolutely.
So, but that takes practice. Empathy is one of the subscales that the majority of people that have taken this assessment can definitely grow their skills on. Okay. All right, I'd like to ask our listeners if anybody has any questions about emotional intelligence. Could be about the assessment itself. It could be about anything that we've said today.
I think we had one question from email that was,
okay.
What do you do if you have high emotional intelligence, but the leaders you work with do not have high emotional intelligence?
All right. So that's definitely an opportunity, and thank you to the person that asked that. I would go back to the last piece of advice here that Jill just talked about, to really stop, to write out what each of those colleagues' interests, what their motivations are, what their challenges, to really stop and look at them. And yes, we're going to have weaknesses and we're going to have strengths. So identify what they bring to the table that's positive, and then look at where you're having trouble, but connect that with where they're coming from. Then it is truly up to you to take the lead in managing those relationships. That's hard. It takes time. But if you will come from a place of personal ownership versus looking at the other person as being the problem, it will make a vast difference in your success. Okay. If you had to choose one EQ that employers value, what would it be? My first thought is that would depend on the culture of the organization. So where I would go with that is, let's say it's a sales environment. I'm thinking of an organization I used to do a lot of work with. It was a very sales-oriented organization, and so assertiveness was key in this organization. I wouldn't say that there was much empathy there. They were highly successful. But on that point, there was a lot of dysfunction. And a lot of it went to really not feeling cared about, also feeling that there was a lot of constant conflict. For some of the salespeople, they would work through that. For some of the others, not so much. Another question here, can past experiences, excuse me. Yeah, I may have missed it. Where can we get the EI assessment? Who administers the costs, etc.? Well, I am so glad you asked that. I am a certified practitioner of the MH Multi-Health Systems EQI assessment. So I can work with people on their leadership assessment or on their 360 if they would like to do that. In terms of the cost, we usually include that within a coaching situation. So if you'd like to connect with me offline, I'd be glad to help you there. There are a number of books that you can read. I do think that the assessment, the MHS, is certainly at least one of the two best assessments that are on the market because they are so heavily validated. But I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
And Shirley, I would say as a client that for me, taking the assessment and having it, calculated electronically and getting some data and information was great. But now what do I do with it? Mm-hmm. And so the sitting down and really talking about how to take what I've been told through, this algorithm and all this great information and then applying it to my daily situation, whether that's with family or friends, and also being able to work with you to say, okay, you've got a lot of things that are going really well, to celebrate those strengths and those mm-hmm. successes in your emotional intelligence, but to say, okay, here's where tweaking these things make a big difference. I don't think I would have been able to have extrapolated that just out of the data without having mm-hmm. someone who can understand it and work the data. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. The job of a coach is to listen far more than talk. The other part of it is to ask the right questions at the right time. So it's not the coach's job to come up with the answers and to tell the client. It's the coach's job to ask the questions. And through those questions about the client's perception about the assessment and drilling into each of the subscales, then we can really start to tease out where's the best place to start. And invariably, when people receive their assessments, the first thing they do is they look, of course, to their lowest and start there. And it's always about going back and saying, no, let's talk about what you do really well, because you can use that to leverage the rest of it. Okay, thanks, Jill, for sharing that. Another question here is, would it be beneficial to assemble a team whose EQ is more similar to one another or more complementary? That's interesting. That's an interesting question. I go back, my first thought was, everybody can grow their emotional intelligence. And it's truly an opportunity for everyone. If you have someone who, let's say, has a low area, I think that person's colleagues can, in an appropriate manner, a very collegial manner, help this person grow. They can manage those relationships and just share among them. I think we do that here at our office. So I don't know that I would assemble a team with similar ones. I think a good mix is good, and then for everybody to help grow their expertise. Yeah. As Jill just said, you don't want a whole team of people with low impulse control. Oh, that would be difficult. That would be difficult. Okay.
Be interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
I think that's
all right.
Questions that we had.
All right. Thank you, Joe. I'd like to move on to an opportunity here before we close. This is a special offering. We are partnering with the Indiana Chamber, and in late January, I will be doing 2 full-day sessions that are open to the public. If you are a member, you do get a discount, and these are very reasonably priced. The topics are the accountability mindset, which this focuses on how you can live in a place of personal ownership. And then, very importantly, how you can lead your team in the same manner. Possibly you do live in that mindset, but your team does not. And so they might be focusing on blame of their cross-functional colleagues, of situations of the organization. The other one that follows the next day is the full session on emotional intelligence impact, which I did give you some highlights of, but we really drill down into a number of these subscales and help people build out their own tactics and their own action plan so that they can start to really grow. The key with any of this is to take away one nugget, just one nugget, and apply that, which will make it just a huge difference in your life. If you'd like more information on this, you can certainly go to the Chamber's website, or I believe it is now up on our website as well. Our president, Andrea Butcher, will be facilitating our next webinar on January 9th. The topic is Manager Essentials, Equipping Your Frontline Managers to Lead. This webinar will provide highlights of our full Manager Essential program. Andrew's truly passionate about this, so you won't want to miss this training. You can register for this on our website, or please feel free to reach out to any of us here via LinkedIn or through our website.
On the 25th.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the 20th. Oh, it's been changed.
Yep.
My apologies. It is on the 25th then.
Yeah, you'll see it on the website.
All right. I want to thank all of you for attending, and I so appreciate your participation because that adds so much more meaning to the event. We hope that you'll join us in the future. Bye now.